Hey guys, this is a video about virtual economies, what they are and how they might look in the future. There's a lot to go over, so please watch until the very end. A virtual economy is an economy inside of a virtual reality world. To my knowledge, there's never been a virtual economy yet. The closest things we've had were in-game economies of Second Life, EVE Online, and Entropia Universe. They were all very close to a virtual economy and all had the same features that a virtual economy would have, except for being in virtual reality. The distinction I'm drawing here might seem arbitrary at first, but it's anything but. The virtual reality component makes all the difference. Suddenly worlds have this physicality to them that could never be achieved in flat games. The things you're buying feel more like things. The people you talk to feel like they're there. The way you move around and look at things and interact with things feel natural. This creates a possibility space far larger than any flat game. And by possibility space, I'm talking about possible economically viable products. To illustrate what I mean, let's talk briefly about other game economies. So games like World of Warcraft or Diablo 3 have golden items. Some people farm golden items and sell them for real money using third-party websites. This pegs their economy to real-life money, whether people like it or not. Work grinding translates into money made. It's an economy, but the scope is narrow. It's a service-based economy, where time spent grinding is the service. Then there are games with much more robust economies like EVE Online. This game pretty much has player-run countries. Each item has a value in ISK, and ISK translates to a dollar amount that is somewhat pegged to how much it costs to buy more game time. The difference here is that items are manufactured by players. There's an entire supply chain, from people mining the raw materials, to manufacturing, to transport and distribution. However, this economy is still restricted by the game itself. It also has no official way of selling your ISK for real-life money, and only items that already exist in the game's source can be created. Many would argue that Second Life was a virtual economy in every way except for being in virtual reality. I tend to agree, but I think it was just a decade and a half too early, so it never reached its full potential. Second Life had an official exchange where you could exchange your Linden dollars for real money. This exchange was called Lindex. Right now the exchange rate is about 307 Linden dollars to $1 US. In 2009, this economy generated 567 million US dollars. It accomplished this in three main ways. One was allowing players to create their own items and import them into the game to sell to other players. These items could be things like buildings, vehicles, animations, clothing, avatars, and a multitude of other virtual goods. The second way was virtual real estate. You could rent land from Linden Labs, and this allowed you to build whatever you wanted on that land. You could also subdivide the land and rent out those smaller parcels. This has created millionaires, by the way. The third way is by offering services like being a real estate agent. There were numerous reasons why people would want real estate. Some were corporations that wanted to advertise their brand. Some wanted to rent it out. Some just wanted virtual land where they could put a virtual house near their friends. For any virtual economy to work and truly grow, it must have a handful of things. The first thing is the most important, and that is the feeling of community. Those of you out there who have tried things like VRChat and Rec Room know how it feels like you're actually in a place and the avatar you're talking to feels like they're really there too. It's much easier to create a sense of community in VR. Without even having things like facial tracking, you can often communicate nearly as effectively as in real life. The second thing a virtual economy must have is a virtual currency, and a way to transfer this currency into real-life money and vice versa. The exchange must be run by the creators of the game. This will peg the economy to something real, basically something like Second Life's Linden dollars and Lindex. This virtual currency must remain very stable. Instability in this currency would kill the virtual economy. The third thing is user-created products. This means the game must have support for content that can be created in or out of the game, then sold to other players in-game. VRChat seems like it's going to be the first virtual economy. If we look at their website, they're hiring a virtual economist to help design and implement their virtual currency and create their virtual economy. This virtual currency has not been implemented as of yet, but we can explore how it might affect things by looking at the economy in VRChat as it currently is. It's easiest to illustrate by walking through a virtual marketplace in VRChat. This is an event that happens every once in a while and only stays open for about 5 days. Japanese businesses and artists and creators create booths in one of the worlds that make up the virtual marketplace. You buy the item or look at their website by clicking on a button in an in-game menu, and then it opens the page in a browser on your computer. You can also take a picture of a QR code with the in-game camera, then open it later and scan the QR code with your phone. It's very clunky either way. The booths have been used for things like advertising an artist or creator or corporation, or selling real-life t-shirts or selling 3D models like avatars that you can use, or props to either attach to your avatar or place in your own world. The introduction of a virtual economy should create a far more fluid experience, and we should see stores popping up all over the place. The most obvious things that are going to be sold are avatars, props, 3D models, template worlds, and buildings. Basically anything you could buy in Second Life, except maybe in VRChat you'll actually get a 3D model file that you can use in other projects. It's up to the developers to expand the possibility space in their game though. If a company with a lot more resources like Valve were to make a social VR game with a virtual economy, I would think they'd also sell virtual real estate, somewhat like Second Life. I know a lot of you don't like this idea, but please bear with me for a minute and let me explain why I think this might actually be good. If Valve made a social VR game with real estate, then there would have to be an overworld map. In this overworld, the real estate closest to the entry points of the map would have the highest value because of the sheer amount of people that will see it. Think about it. If the game has 10 million daily active users, and whenever they log in, the first thing they see would be whatever was placed on that piece of land. Consider if Coca-Cola bought that piece of land and just slapped a billboard on it. They get 10 million views on their ad every day for the price of whatever they paid for that real estate. This would be a greater value than advertising on Facebook or YouTube. That piece of land would be worth thousands. Of course, there'd probably be 100 entry points scattered around the overworld. The pieces of land closest to the entry points would still always be the most valuable though. It would be in our best interest to buy that land before VR real estate is on the radar of large companies. I'm sure once a large company offers you $1 million for your piece of land near entry point 22, you'd sell though. I would, and I think a lot of people would. I think this is how a lot of early VR millionaires are going to be made. There are ways you could monetize your property too. You could sell advertising space on your building's exterior, or you could go the Second Life route and subdivide the property and rent those parcels out. You may have near unlimited amounts of space in the interior of your so-called buildings, so you can put advertisements on the inside there as well. You could also come up with a cool business in VR on your land. Property would transfer around a lot, with new buildings going up all the time. They would need to compete with each other to catch the attention of users, so they'll have to keep improving their exterior designs. If this overworld is designed like a real city, then the further away you go from the entry points, the cheaper the real estate would be. In the outskirts is where you would find all the indies and weird stuff. There are exceptions though, like if a group of people that were popular decided to buy a giant hunk of land on the outskirts and designate it as a cool indie place, then the real estate value there would go up as more and more people came to visit. In a way, cost of real estate sorts the city, with the most lucrative of shops being in the popular areas with a lot of foot traffic and the least lucrative being in the unpopular areas. This is how real estate works more or less in real life. And you might think that's bad, but I want to explain why it might be good in VR. If VR becomes very mainstream, the majority of people would want to stay in the popular areas where all the products and services appeal to them. This keeps them coming back too, and keeps the economy efficient. If somebody wants to just walk down the street and browse the popular stores and do some shopping, they can. They don't have to teleport across the city to go to Amazon, then teleport to some other nether region to visit Nike. It's all right there. Now for people like us, and I'm assuming you're like me, we're the explorers. We like to explore and go to all the weird places so that we can tell our friends. This type of VR world makes it easy to explore. We just have to pick a direction and move away from the entry points. Each of the buildings would just be a facade, and the doorways would be equivalent to the portals in VRChat, where you step through and a player-made world loads. This type of overworld would create a lot of real-life jobs. There would be a very high demand for 3D modelers and for people who are good at exterior and interior design. These larger companies will be mainly using the real estate for brand representation, so it's gotta look good. Now, if I were Valve or whatever company is making this, I would allow people to buy real-life items but from in-game. Like say Amazon buys a parcel of land, then creates an Amazon mall on it. You go inside and you can walk up and down the aisles, pick out an item that you like, and buy it without leaving the game. This item would actually be ordered and delivered from Amazon. If I was Amazon, I'd quickly start making 3D models of the best-selling items or allow FBA users to upload 3D models of their products if they want to be in the VR store. The reason I think this is important is because there's something lost when going from a physical brick-and-mortar store to a website. You can't replicate the feeling of going to a bookstore, going up and down the aisles, just browsing and picking up random things and flipping through it. The way you can meander around and end up finding things you didn't know you wanted until you found it. In VR, you can replicate this. Now you can go to Amazon's 100-story mega mall and go to the Library of Congress-sized bookstore and wander around looking for things that might be interesting. Same with any other physical product. Amazon would also be smart to expand into virtual products as well. Just saying. Now this creates an influx of people with smaller businesses, maybe Etsy artisans or whatever, who want a VR presence. Not everybody knows how to model, not everybody knows how to do exterior design or VR world design. Not everybody knows how to code. There are a bunch of real service jobs being created to support this VR world. There would also be plenty of shops that support these service jobs, like VR furniture shops, VR prop shops, the VR inflatable wacky wavy arm man shop, the VR anime girl salesman shop, and countless others. VR world presence becomes the new internet, where everybody wanted a website. All this speculation is no good if nobody's going to make a VR app like this. Why would a company put so much effort into making something like this? What is the monetization strategy? Consider this. The developer can take a small portion of every transaction made in the virtual economy. Basically a sales tax. The virtual city doesn't pay the sales tax to the government though. It pays it to whoever owns the virtual world. The company who develops this essentially becomes the government, collecting taxes on a city that can grow to whatever size it needs, and the only infrastructure projects to spend money on are just the cost of running these servers. The company who creates this essentially collects taxes on an entire city. Let's take a medium-sized county like Clark County, basically all the regions that together make up Las Vegas, for example. They have a population of about 2.1 million people. From 2017 to 2018, they collected $847 million in sales tax. Now, of course, people aren't going to spend all their money on VR stuff, right? It'd be crazy to assume that people would spend as much in VR as they do on real-life stuff. However, I think a lot of people will spend a significant amount of money because we as a society have been training ourselves to. Think about microtransactions. We've trained an entire population on being okay with purchasing digital goods a few dollars at a time. And same with virtual stores. We've been using Amazon for decades. We're okay with buying stuff online now. When Second Life was big, we didn't really have a feel for buying digital goods. We would scoff at people buying digital goods. I think with all this exposure to things like microtransactions and shopping online, it's not that big of a leap to think people will be okay with buying stuff in virtual reality. We would need a larger player base than 2.1 million to collect the same amount of taxes as a city. I think at 20 million you could though. Does 20 million players seem crazy to you? while Fortnite has 250 million players. They essentially make money selling things to their player base, who I remind you is made of mostly younger people with no significant spending power. This mostly jobless player base made Epic $2.4 billion in 2018. They collected more from players than Las Vegas did from sales tax on their population. Keep in mind, a transaction tax isn't the only way for a developer to make money on their virtual world. There are a lot of ways, and I've only covered some of the most obvious ones. There's a lot to be made here if you keep your eyes open. We true believers or early adopters or whatever you want to call us will be the ones that benefit the most, besides the developers. No, we won't exactly escape the oppressing realities of daily life like being advertised to and things costing money, but if we do this right, we can profit greatly off the system and help shape and build the virtual economies of the future. That's why even though it sounds dystopian and full of capitalist greed, it'll be beneficial overall, at least for the early adopters. You don't have to participate if you don't want to, but just be ready for the gold rush that's coming. I hope you liked this video. Please subscribe if you'd like more.